So, if we're ready to get rolling here, put your hands together and let's welcome to the stage Mr. Eddie Speed.
Good morning, everybody. Come on. Good morning. Okay, so we're going to talk about a subject. First thing this morning is what was my original start in this business, which was just finding notes, just going out there and finding notes on an individual basis, and something that we've done in our shop and trained more people in our shop, I would say cumulatively, than anybody in the industry. And so we're going to talk about that this morning. So I titled it, Flip or Flop Your Note Business. I thought that was a very catchy title. You know, I thought of that myself. Yeah. I had a dream and dreamed of that flip or flop thing, you know what I'm saying? Actually, believe it or not, we actually have had NoteSchool attendees that are some of the TV stars of Flip or Flop, and we actually have one that's probably going to be in Atlanta, and he is the one that did Flip or Flop Atlanta, Ken Corsini. They come to NoteSchool now. Apparently there's something to this creative financing thing. We'll talk more about that this afternoon. Okay, so we're going to talk about either being a master broker or we're going to talk about being a note flipper. And we'll talk a little bit about Ben's side of the business. But if you've been to a class in the last year, you know that Ben has a pretty incredible part-time business where he has doctors that capitalize him buying notes. And he makes upfront income and long-term income. So we sort of label that a master broker. Ben is technically running an entity, so he's not technically a broker. And we sort of renamed what was called being a note broker for all the years and call that kind of a note flipper. That's just something more that today's society can relate to. So, man, I was really searching for something that I thought was this, and this resonated with me. So when he decided to produce his V8 motor, he chose to build an engine with the entire 8 cylinders cast in one block and instructed his engineers to produce and design the engine. The design was placed on paper, but the engineers agreed to a man that it was simply impossible to cast an 8-cylinder engine block in one piece. Henry Ford's response was, produce it anyway. So this is a business that is full of I can or I can'ts. And I will tell you that this is a mindset. I'm not saying that everybody is wired to be a note flipper, right? But I'm saying to you that everybody that is wired to be a note flipper can find a reason they can't do it unless you just decide to persevere past the I can'ts. That's been my life experience. So, the master broker side, and that's obviously what we've seen Ben do, is where you basically have note inventory. So that could be us, it could be some other trade desk like a paper stack, it could be other sources of notes where you buy portfolios or whatever that may be. And on the other side, you have a passive investor, right? You're the guy in the middle. So the source of the notes are where you're locating, and then the source of the money is your passive investors. And you're taking the inventory from that inventory source on to the passive investor, and then the passive investor pays for the inventory. Typically speaking, then, whoever owns the inventory has a fee agreement with you, and they pay you a commission. When Ben does a class today with 1,000% integrity, he says, well, in June I made $32,000, in July I made $38,000, and in August I made $47,000. And I went back a little bit in September and I only made, and he goes on and on and on. So we're saying that this master broker thing is a real deal. Now let me say this, I will not let somebody that's not a NoteSchool member, I won't let them be a master broker. And the reason's pretty simple. I can get the chokehold on you. Some guy that goes in Notes Direct and claims he's all that in a bag of chips and ties up a bunch of notes and doesn't close, my speakerphone is going to buzz in my office, and on the other end of that phone is going to be a guy named Bob Repass that's responsible for running the profitability of a company. And he says, this nitwit broker tapped the I'm going to buy button, and now all of a sudden he's got some sad story about why they don't have the money put together. So we put a tight leash on who we're willing to do this with, and we allow our NoteSchool members to be the only people that can be a master broker for us. Literally, you're the only ones. And it is because if you tap the buy button, you got to have your dough put together. Right? Ben was so cautious in the early days that he literally would have the doctor wire the money to him before he'd hit the buy button because he did not want to fail at that process. So this is a put your big boy britches on game, but it is very profitable. And a lot of you guys need to look at it. And Ben teaches this a good bit when he comes to 3-day classes now. If you haven't been this year, then I suggest you come listen to this because it's very good and Ben's done a great job. In fact, Ben has a series of commercials, and he will make that available for a very modest amount of money. I don't remember what it is, less than $700. And 6 of them that he made, and he'll have somebody that then tapes and basically white labels it to whatever you want it to be. And they are just a rock star set of little 4-minute animated commercials like people like Martha use, and for passive investors. One of the best ones, I think, is one that shows the difference between what do you have when you have a rent house and what do you have when you have a note. And believe me, at the end of 4 minutes, you're pretty convinced a note's better than a rent, right? So it's very good. It's something that you guys ought to consider. And this is an area of the business that may not suit every one of you, but there are a lot of you that really, really, really ought to know. And Ben has been a rock star doing this. Obviously, we have many more. Greg Peterson's been a rock star doing it. So there's a lot of guys that have done this well, and we're talking about significant income, right? Not insignificant income, unless you call multi-6-figure numbers insignificant per year. And the other side of the fence is the seller-financed loan, and this is where you find an individual that seller-financed a property, or it could be a portfolio. You're the note flipper in the middle, and you find a funding source. So your source of notes is the person that's seller financed, and then your source of money would be bank capital funds. We would fall under one of those 2 categories, as well as just regular passive investors. And you're the guy in the middle. And you take the note from your seller financer and onto the funding source, and then you find out that your funding source pays directly the person who's seller financed. And then outside of closing, a fee that's not disclosed to the seller, the fee comes to you from the funding source. And this is kind of the industry standard. This is the way it's been done forever. And if wholesaling is the most overpopulated market I've ever seen in real estate today, and it is, by the way, this is the least populated strategy I see in the entire industry. There is less people brokering notes today than there was in 1989. There's less people doing it than there were in 1999 for sure. And in 2006, same thing. So this industry kind of blew up when Bob was running Bayview and they couldn't buy anymore because they couldn't securitize. The industry just completely hit like a bomb, and people quit doing this, and we as an industry haven't refilled this gap. This is probably the most underserved strategy in the industry today. So to tell you how important I think this is and how lucrative I think people could make it, we've invited 3 different guys to speak at NoteExpo that are magnum ninjas at negotiating, because this is a game of negotiating, right? So one of them is a guy that trains virtually 100% of the top 500 wholesaling companies in the United States. He trains literally about 100% of the top 500 guys in the business on negotiating. His name is John Martinez. He is a stud. And you're talking about negotiating and getting somebody at the closing table and getting them to the yes. Of all the studs I know, he's the stud. He's it. And he's going to be a keynote speaker. You'll hear him. And he is a psychologist at the closing table. And he trains virtually every acquisitions guy of all the biggest guys in the business. That's how good he is. Most of you have never even heard of him, right? If you're on social media and you see things like Investor Fuel or all those different things, then you know who John Martinez is. But let me just tell you, behind the scenes, the real guys that are sitting here in the audience like Seth, will tell you he's the stud, right, Seth? He's the guy. Seth bought 180 houses last year, and he couldn't have done it without John Martinez. So I am introducing the idea that John Martinez could help some of our students with real negotiation. You can't make your phone ring in direct mail. If you can make your phone ring easy enough, if you can't close the deal, don't drop the mail. It ain't going to do you any good. You're just burning money, right? And so I don't want you to burn money, and I want to help you do this. And I'm going to give you a call to action at the end of this to say we're going to send out a survey, and there's going to be, I want to participate, but there's going to be conditions to the participation, right? So this is a very critical part of the process. And obviously we have direct mail. And let me just tell you this, if I get the right level of interest, I'm highly connected with ninja marketers in the house buying business. In fact, a Titanium member is named Christina Kraus. She runs marketing for 50 of the top 150 guys in the business. She's a Titanium NoteSchool member, right? So we have a lot of connections with people that are connected at a super high level. We can go scrape a list from Scott Arpan and get text numbers and do the texting just like all the house buyers do. We can do it. But it's not going to do any good if we can't do what? We got to close them, right? And the closing technique, and by the way, we can even provide you with people that can give you a test, and they can tell you if you have this in your DNA to do this. And by the way, if you want to hire an acquisitions person, you can give them a test, and you can figure out whether they have the DNA. So there's some people that just aren't wired to do this. And I don't want to tell somebody, if you're not wired to do it, I don't want to create misery for you. But you can hire an acquisitions person that can do this, right? This is possible. Probably of the top 500 guys in the business, maybe 15% of them are still actually at the kitchen table buying houses. The rest of them hire acquisitions guys. So they hire trained assassins to go to the kitchen table and close. And they're tested, and they're vetted, and they're taught how to do this. They're wired to go do this function. And so I'm looking at this saying, I'm around all the biggest wholesalers in the business on a weekly, daily basis. You see some of them around NoteSchool, and there's going to be a lot more coming, right? So I'm around the guys that have done this in the house buying business. And I'm saying, if we get the right kind of interest and the right kind of dedication, we can add this to our business. Really simple, and this is how it works. So this is something I've done for a day or two. That is me. And I spent my life with that phone cocked behind my ear. I used to have the little thing that laid the phone receiver on my shoulder, and then I wore a headset for a long time. That's why I got so good at doing rope tricks. I'd wear a headset and walk over. You should see I had floor-to-ceiling glass. That was on Las Colinas Boulevard. And I'd walk over there and pull the sash shade, the shade all the way up so I'd have a long sash cord. And that's when I practiced my rope tricks while I was buying notes. True story. True story. All right, so first of all, the right note. It's got to be buyable. You're wasting your time if you're negotiating on a note that nobody else would buy. Right, so it's got to be buyable. There's 6 characteristics that influence the value of a note. And if you're a NoteSchool member, that should be welded into your brain. That should be welded into your brain of the 6 characteristics that influence the value of a note. And we all know that we buy imperfect, particularly if you're doing direct mail and you're buying mom and pop. I can tell you from long experience that you're not going to find perfect notes. What most people don't understand is you make the killing on the ones that are weird. You don't make the killing on the ones that are perfect. The beautiful $250,000 brick house that is perfect and 25% down and 800 credit score, you're going to be fighting with you and 17 brokers that are actually in the business are going to be fighting over that one deal, and you're going to end up bidding it up to nothing. You ain't going to make any juice on it. Typically speaking, that's what you find. The really sweet deals, the funding source loves you, but your checking account doesn't love you because you cut the heart out of the deal because it's so good. You may not have to be that competitive on it, but in my years when people call me with a really perfect note, I knew I was going to have to fight for that note. The ones I made a killing on are the ones that my competition couldn't figure out how to structure or buy or put together. So the ones that have hair on them are the ones that have opportunity. That's how it works. The other thing I would say is if you're flipping notes to other investors, this is one thing that I saw was not common thinking in all of the years that we were around this and all of the sources, right? You got Tracy sitting in the room. She was number 2 in charge of production at Metropolitan. You got Bob sitting in the room. Bob was buying $250 million a year at Associates and later $400 million a year at Bayview. Scott Tyler was his lead buyer. Scott runs our trade desk. Scott has bought $1 billion in seller finance notes. So we've been around all the traders, all the brokers. And I would tell you that when Tracy was sitting at the executive desk or when Bob was sitting at the executive desk and I called them, I had credibility. They knew that I was not going to lie to make a deal close. And they knew that I could think like an underwriter. In other words, I knew what made sense. So if you want to be good at this business, always think like the guy that you're trying to sell notes to, think in their terms of their shoes. Your job is to be creative. The guy that's the underwriter, it is not his job to be creative. It's your job to show him the logic of why that deal makes sense the way you're structuring it, right? It's not the underwriter's job. If your success is based on the creativity of an underwriter, you need to rethink that. That doesn't make any sense. You know what I'm saying? So my job was to be creative and show them a logical deal that they're like, yeah, we could live with that. And that's how it really works. So you always have to think like the investor, and you got to do pricing that fits. Listen, if you're doing direct mail, Scott and I totally believe that 75% of every deal you close should be a partial. If you're doing direct mail and you are like a stud, not a quoter. There's a trader and a quoter. A quoter is somebody that takes the price from the funding source and calls their seller back and they give them a price. That's a quoter. That ain't a deal maker. That's just a quoter. So because these deals all have weird stuff on them in weird ways, and I can tell you that you can hide the discount in a partial. You can make it viable for somebody, a funding source, and you can make it viable for your seller. And so if you're not constantly working the heck out of how you could structure these deals other than the plain vanilla offer, I'm just telling you, you're not getting the juice out of the lemon. You're taking a tiny squeeze on top of the lemon. So effective negotiations, okay? First of all, you have to have a solid marketing magnet, right? There's not multiple sources to buy notes today. You're either probably going to do direct mail, I think texting, or phone or voicemail drops is a possibility. That technology to add that to your business is highly available. Most every wholesaler in the business does it today. I'm very connected with the vendors that do all that, so I think that's a very good possibility. Direct mail, Tracy has a great website system. You can do it. The problem with the internet is you're going to get shopper city. right? And the way you buy these notes is you slow it down. You don't rush to a fast offer. And the internet is not very conducive to really effectively doing that. So a lot of times, quite honestly, if you're competing on the internet, you're competing against people that are basically intentionally just giving people a price so they'll sign up. And then they call them back 3 weeks later and go, oh, shucks, can't do that. So they're playing the requote. Not because they can't help it, because it's intentional. It's not ethical. I don't like it. And that's one of my biggest objections against driving the internet traffic really hard is that. But either way, you definitely would want a website and position yourself. And you have to have a clear selling cycle. So we're at this event, and this kid, he's 28 or whatever. He's all over in social media. And he's kind of like, they're positioning him like the ultimate virtual house buyer. He's dropping mail and dropping text and voice mails or voice drops and all that stuff in all these markets. And they're positioning him, and it's like watching this guy present. It's just Wild West crazy stuff. I don't know what else to say. It's just crazy stuff. But they're positioning, and it's like he's got the mystery that nobody else has figured out. Virtual house buying. I mean, it's like they make it sound like the sexiest thing you've ever heard in your life. It's virtual. You can sit in your office and do it anywhere in the country. I'm like, shit, I've been doing that since 1980. That's the only way I've ever bought a note. I've never bought a note it wasn't virtual. This is virtual note buying. Now, we may not make it sound as sexy as some guy on social media makes it sound, but the truth of the matter is, that's what it is. So let me just tell you this. It's a selling cycle. You have a conversation, you lead in the conversation with a set of questions that leads for a conversation tomorrow to go get those questions answered. You move into step 2, you move into step 3, and usually by step 4 is when you deliver the offer. This is a selling cycle. If you don't understand the selling cycle, I tell people if you're negotiating and you don't know where you are, you're lost. If you're in the negotiation process and you don't know where you are, I'll promise you I know where you are, you're lost. And so this is an intentional, deliberate process that I want people to be able to do. And you have to expect the no before the yes. Y'all might not believe this, but NoteSchool has actually trained some engineers. Seriously, I've actually trained some engineers. Now let me tell you about the engineer personality. An engineer personality operates with a process. Everything is a defined process for an engineer. So here's how the engineer thinks, and I'm sorry because it's just the truth. Okay, I did everything. I followed the process. I did everything Eddie told me. I did this, and then 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 I made the offer, and he said no. So I went and found another one. Are you kidding me? A good salesman can't hear. He's almost deaf. He can't hear no. Right? No is spelled 2 different ways. N-O and K-N-O-W. Usually it's the latter. And so if you give up because the guy said no, don't continue to market to buy direct to seller in note flipping, because I can tell you that your next strategy will be just as unsuccessful as your last one. Expect the no and be diligent to work them to the yes. This is exactly how it works. You're giving them bad news. Everybody understand that? They had a note. It was $150,000. They thought they were going to call you and you were going to give them $145,000. Now you call them up and tell them you're going to give them $108,000 for their $150,000 note? That doesn't sound reasonable to them. It sounds like It's upsetting. How could you do this? In fact, who would you rather deal with? When you give a price to a customer, would you rather the customer at the end of the conversation say, Eddie, thank you for calling, and that was I really appreciate it. I'm sorry we couldn't do business, but man, I really appreciate the conversation. Or would you rather have the customer at the end go, oh, God, I can't believe you offered me that money. Which customer would you rather deal with, one or two? How many of you would rather deal with one, the first one? Huh? Okay, is the rest of you just not going to raise your hand, or are you just not going to participate? How many of you would rather deal with number two? Okay, now why did you say that? Do you know why you said that? When they jump at your price, they just told you they were motivated. When they jump at your price, they just told you they're motivated. So the obvious customer you want to deal with is somebody that wants to banter with you a little bit, that wants to go back and forth and say, what the heck? That's a guy that showed you he needs the money. Not the other way where somebody was all sweet. The sweet little old lady that thanks you for calling, and now she's got to call her son or her insurance agent. I can just tell you right now, you can stick a fork in that deal. That deal's done. She can't make a decision about nothing. But the guy that jumps and screams, I'm telling you, he's the guy that shows you motivation. See, I look at it like this. We're training you to be a warrior, right? We're training you to be a warrior. We have to teach you what your enemy's actions are and what to expect from them. If you don't know what to expect from them, then you're surprised, you're shocked. Well, how'd that happen? It's not an accident, it's predictable behavior. The next thing is, y'all ever heard what do they call it, the 6 P's that they talk about in the military? Is that what it is? Keith, the 6 P's? Is it 7? Yeah. Say it again. Stand up and say it loud. Exactly. That's a military saying. I have a Matt Finolio, David's son, is a Marine. And so he will quote that to us on a regular basis when we don't plan well. And it's just the truth. If you have poor follow-up, your conversion is going to suck. About 25% of the people that sell you a note will sell you in the first 60 days. 75% of the people that will sell you a note will sell you the note after you quoted them, after the 60th day that you initially gave them a quote. 75% of your conversions. So if you, I like the way Seth describes his house buying business. Seth says there's 2 ways they'll drop you off the list, right? He says one way is they say, basically, the no-call list, don't call me anymore. And the second way, Seth, is it says that they die. And then he calls your heirs. That's the way to do it. You have to have a tolerance for rejection. So let me just tell you something. We all have different personalities and stuff. So let me just tell you a little bit about my DNA and my personality. I'm a pleaser. I want people to love me. Part of the reason that I went into the training business and pursued this is because I like what I'm doing. I like this. I have a passion for it. I see that I can be effective. Yes, I have a business model, but it also suits my DNA. It suits my personality. And I really do love doing this. And I want you to love me. And I will tell you that some people just suck the life out of me because they're negative and they find flaws and it could have been perfect. And now because of you, it's not perfect and you're ruining my life. And I'm like, good God. You know, I could think of some suggestions I could make to them. You know what I'm saying? But part of this is, for me to have a public business, I have to develop a tolerance. because I'm going to find people that suck the life out of me. You know what I'm saying? I just can't really let them suck the life out of me. You're going to find customers that are going to sell you a deal and make a crazy profit on just flipping a note. But guess what's going to happen? Your initial engagement with them is not going to reflect that you're going to make a huge profit. You're going to look like you're off the rails. And so in order to do this well, you've got to go deal and have a tolerance for that. And I tell people all the time, you really need to test your DNA to see if you're wired for this, right? Because there's some people, I don't want you to do anything that like causes you depression or whatever, seriously. And so you need to really make sure you have a tolerance for it. And then you got to be, you got to be that frog that's getting swallowed by that. Everybody seen that picture of the frog that's getting swallowed by the stork? Everybody seen that picture? Like the frog has got his little hand around the stork's neck like that, and he's going to stop him from swallowing. And the old saying is never give up. You got to be that guy. And then the right investor, right? Listen, there's institutional investors that have very, very good pricing in the business. And they'll be here like Fanac, and you need to do business with them. And we're certainly telling you, you need to go have a relationship and do business with them. But I will tell you this, they probably will buy about 20% of the fundable notes that you're going to work on. So you can't just go have just a bank, and you have to make sure that that investor has tolerance for your investment, right? At least once a month, Bob or Charles or somebody in my office or me will assure you that some investor comes along, yeah, you know, I've got relationships with Wall Street money, and we're wanting to look into notes and adding, and they're telling us all this kind of stuff. And we start asking them what other kind of investments they've made. Because if they've never bought low price band seller finance notes, I'm not fixing to be their test case, right? They can go try out somebody else as their test case, and then once they prove they own a portfolio of that. So I always say you got to go deal with an investor that understands your investment and has a tolerance for it. What is their investment track record? In other words, do they own assets like this, or is this their first rodeo? Number 3, the other question is will they go around you? Oh, yeah. It can happen, right, Mariska? It can happen. So you need to make sure that you're latched up and that your investor is not going to go do the end around on you, and you're going to get initially a turn down and find out 90 days later the investor dealt directly with the seller and they didn't invite you to the birthday party. Yeah. You need to understand their due diligence process. So yesterday, we were riding from the airport to here, and Matt, my son-in-law, was with me, and I was describing to Matt and trading lots of portfolios of notes. When I was selling a lot to associates in Metropolitan Bayview, these guys that really thought the business was all about name dropping. They thought, well, I know Metro's name or I know Bayview's name. I can just deal directly with them. I don't need you, Eddie Speed. What made me good in the business is I understood what they were going to need to pull the final lever to order the wire, right? What their due diligence process was going to look like at the end of the game. And so you need to start really digging early in the game with the investor and figuring out what they have a tolerance for and what they'll buy. By the way, just so y'all know, I forgot my clock down there, Bob, so I may need that clock. Awesome. Then the next thing is the process, your role and their role. So you need to know how the loan processing works. Most of our career in the note business, we processed all our own notes. We did it for the investor, and at the end of the day, we handed the investor a file with a ribbon around it, and they closed it. I find that very seldom today is true. So a lot of the note flippers in the business today think their job is done the second they get the loan under contract, right? To really be a pro at this business, you need to be willing to stay involved as the documentation becomes true. So let me tell you a little reality in this business. Note sellers frequently exaggerate, right? Every note seller, no note seller oversold their property. I've never had a phone call with a note seller and they said, well, here's the truth. I really sold it for about 115% of what it's worth, right? What do they always say? I gave it away. Oh, look, I sold it for 100, but it was really worth 120. I mean, these people need to join the Peace Corps. Okay, they are like the most benevolent people you've ever met. The people that own or finance property when they sold it, until you order the BPO, right? Larry Marischka had a great deal recently, and they told Scott the value, and Scott automatically assumed that they oversold it. Now, it turns out they probably didn't oversold it. They actually undersold it. But that is like 1 in 500 deals, literally. It's almost always the opposite. So understand that when the BPO comes in low, or there's hair on it, or wait a minute, we pull the credit report and they have they've got a 738 credit score. Combined, Mr. and Mrs. Right? Then all of a sudden, you got to go call those people back and tell them that you can't, in fact, buy the whole note, that you're going to have to buy a partial and you're going to fund about 40% of the original price. But the good news is they're not going to sell their whole note for 40% less. They're just going to get less money today and more money tomorrow. You see, if you can't do that in the note business, you're done. You can stick a fork in your business. You're done. You're fried. These are all the things that involve what I say are getting the juice out of the lemon. If you can do all of these things right, you're going to wake up and figure out today you have the least competition since I've been doing this since 1980. I believe that seriously there's less than 10 seriously talented people on the phone buying direct today. Literally probably 10. This is the most underserved market I've ever seen in my life. So what I've just done for the last essentially 30 minutes is told you the hard part of the job. The benefit of the job is amazing. The necessity to do what I've just described to you is essential. So the question is, are you ready to saddle up? Now, our first question is, if you're ready to saddle up, is take all of these components and bring them together and focus on what's doable. Okay? Don't focus on the noise. Focus on what's doable. Take all of these components and pull them together, and let's look at it and figure out exactly what this looks like. So, Mr. Moore, Mr. Tyler, we have a project for you, right? We have a project for you. You know when your kid joins some junior high sports and like church basketball, and the basketball coach makes them sign a contract that they're going to show up for practice and that they're going to work on drills and stuff? Y'all all have had kids that had to do that? Well, guess what? We're going to kind of do that, right? So one of the things is I want you to truly look in the mirror and say, is this a fit for me, right? Truly look in the mirror and say, this is a fit for me, because Eddie has mentioned tolerance, and he's mentioned personality trait, and he's mentioned prepare for the no and be accepting, know that that's, you got to make sure that's part of your DNA and you can live it. Martha would tell you she's not wired to do this. Martha knows how to do it. She just doesn't have a tolerance for it, right? We've heard every my poodle dogs in the vet story you can hear from note sellers, okay? We've heard them all, right? And these people entertain you a little bit, or they aggravate you out of your mind. And if they aggravate you out of your mind, let me just tell you something. If you don't see any entertainment in some of the crazy stuff they tell you, then you really aren't. This doesn't suit you. By the way, if they don't tell you their deepest, darkest, most I can't believe they said that to me stuff, then you're ineffective with your customers. So every good note buyer always goes, oh my God, I can't believe that note seller told me, all this stuff. I'm fixing to get divorced, blah, blah, blah. You can think of some of the crazy stuff they might tell you. They tell you about their family. They tell you way too much about their personal life, on and on and on. When they are doing that, you know you connected with them. When they're never telling you that, you have no connection with them. That's a pretty good little litmus test to figure out where you fit in this process. So there's really two kinds of seller finance notes you're going to chase. The mom and pop seller finance note probably is going to be some version of a scraped list. Some version of a scraped list. It could be mail, it could be text, it could be voice drops. You can use the internet. I think Tracy is probably more versed in the internet success than I am, so maybe visit with her while you're here about it. The thing I don't like about the internet is it doesn't really fit the selling cycle of virtual buying, right? In other words, it's a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am kind of deal, and I just have learned you're giving somebody bad news, and the more you slow it down, the more likely you're willing to get a yes from them on that side. The other side, which nobody chases, this is one-offs, is portfolios. So I perfected a technique many years ago, kind of by accident. And that technique was called reverse ad marketing. And basically, I would sit down and we had nothing. At one time, we had 8 people on the road that did nothing but work portfolios of notes. That's all they did. How did we find that many portfolios that 8 guys could stay on the road all the time working those leads? How'd we do it? Reverse ad marketing. So if somebody's seller financing property on a regular basis, they're advertising, right? They're running ads on their Craigslist. They're doing Facebook Marketplace. Today, that's probably the most common way. They still may be using some of the rags, the green sheet, thrifty nickel, and they're on owner financing property. And what we found is when you found somebody frequently running those ads, they had 50 notes. They didn't have one note, they had 50. This can be done as virtual as it can be done across the United States, and this is the most effective way to buy portfolios of notes. So if you ask me in the NoteSchool family who's a specialist in chasing portfolios, in all fairness, I don't know who that is, right? So maybe you're specializing in it and you just forgot to tell me, and that's cool. But this is a very, very lucrative business. From 2000 to 2008, I had an employee that worked one-off deals, and all I did was work on portfolios. I didn't work on a single one-off deal, except for a deal I actually made $170,000 commission on one deal. I did actually work on that one. It was a big deal, big note. But other than that, I didn't do anything but work on portfolios. So I had a network of people that I trained to go chase these deals for me. So I didn't personally do reverse ad marketing, but I had about 4 people scraping reverse ad marketing for about 8 solid years, and that's all I did was work on portfolios of notes. So this can be very lucrative. We do have all this in the membership site, but this is something I am fired up to get into and talk about with you guys on Monday nights, because this is absolutely uncharted waters. I don't know anybody in the United States that actively does this today. Now, there are some specialist guys that do portfolios. Cody Fowler, who is a vendor here, he's a portfolio guy. He came from that space, and he brings us portfolies. But as far as somebody that specializes in it, like that is doing that's looking specifically at seller financing, this is a very uncharted waters. It's not that there's not portfolios; it's that the market is not extracting those portfolios out. This can be on dirt, it can be on builder houses, it can be on rehabber houses, it can be on mobile home and land, it can be on all kind of different things. I bought, half of the portfolios I bought in my career have been on dirt, half of them. And that's because we went out there and found the guys selling dirt through reverse ad marketing, and that's exactly how we did it. Now, once we found one guy that did it, he would tell us other people that were in the same similar business. So we used a referral network once we found that one guy. You could live on the North Pole and do this. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter what time zone you're in. This is simply a matter of getting on the phone and dialing for dollars. So mom and pop notes, there's really 4 steps to this process in being a note flipper, and that is marketing. So you have to use effective marketing. This is why the kind of mail piece you drop, the kind of list you drop, how you create your process is the case. So I can help source you with some copywriters if you want to go start writing copy. If you do not know how to write sales copy, but you got an A in the English class, you're going to suck as a copywriter. Okay, so don't try to write your own sales copy. Right? I have dyslexia, so there is no issue with me knowing I can't write sales copy. I'm 100% clear. I can't spell anything. My grammar's terrible. So there's never been a thing that I thought I was a copywriter. But in my career, I've met thousands of people that got an A in English class and somehow think they know how to write sales solicitation copy. Let me remind you, the most effective marketing campaign for over 10 years was bad grammar. Got milk? So, you see how this works? So there are people that we can help you with if you want to go generate and write some sales copy. There are copywriters that are for hire that know how to write effective sales copy. Okay? The second thing is your power in negotiating, your skill set at negotiating. What is negotiating? What is it? Most people would say negotiating is bartering over price. I want to pay this, you want this, and that's the process. Negotiating is finding out what somebody wants and helping them meet their needs. Negotiating is finding out what the other guy wants and helping them meet their needs. That's negotiating. You got to be a problem solver and a relationship builder, and it's an engagement process. The third thing is structuring the offer. The reason I survived so long in the note flipping business is because I was really good at structuring deals, right? That's one of the reasons I've been able to build NoteSchool, because I'm fairly good at coming up with creative financial models, right? So this is not plain vanilla. I don't want you to be a quoter. I want you to figure out different ways to configure deals and offers that can make sense. And then the last thing is the processing and closing, funding process. And that is a big part of exactly what you're going to be doing. How long I got, Bob? 12 minutes. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to send you out a survey, okay? And we're going to have different categories in the survey. So after NoteExpo, we're going to send you out a survey. And in that survey, we're going to go through and line out a sequence of questions. That survey, Kevin, will have a lot of things that we've discussed within this conversation, right? We're going to help you decide if this is a fit for you, because we don't want you to do something that's frustrating, right? We're going to help you decide if it's a fit for you. And if you think this is a fit, like you see the opportunity and you're saying, okay, I think I meet this criteria Eddie's described. And by the way, if you think you absolutely don't meet the criteria, that doesn't mean you can't hire an acquisitions person to do this, right? You could hire a true salesperson that can get on the phone and negotiate and just have you a hired assassin, just like people that buy houses. Some of the people that run some gigantic wholesaling companies, to be honest with you, they need to go to Walmart and get a personality. Now that's funny. Come on, y'all got to work with me a little bit. You know why they're good? They're good at running a system. And part of their system is an acquisitions person, right? So this isn't always that every ounce of this business has to be you personally. So I'm saying to you, if that's part of the DNA and part of who you are, that's okay. And then in that process, we're gonna ask you a whole sequence of questions. I have the capacity to help introduce you to some significant resources in the business. I think I can help you with negotiation. I don't personally, honestly think I'm John Martinez, right? John Martinez is like an excessively talented guy, right? He is the best closer in the house buying business. He is the guy that teaches everybody. So we have 3 speakers at NoteExpo on negotiation. We have John Martinez. We have Brandon Basic, who is a personal coaching student of Chris Voss's, who is the guy, the #1 hostage negotiator in the world that worked for the FBI. He wrote a book called Never Split the Difference. And then the third one is a guy named Grant Kemp. And Grant has a very different angle on negotiating, which I think is really good. And Grant is going to talk to you about what part of your body makes a decision. Your head, your heart, or your gut. So let me just tell you, this room has 42.67% engineers in it. Okay? You're all going to tell me that you never make a heart decision, you never make a gut decision. 100% of the decisions you make are, you never make a heart decision or a gut decision. Everything you make is a head decision. You're totally logical. Everything has to be, you have to see the numbers, you have to verify it, you have to double check it. You're going to say, I'm a head person. Let me just tell you something. You're not 100% a head person. Right? Because when the logic says you've done enough, then you're going to say, do I like this guy? Right? And then you're going to say, let's go with it. My gut says, let's just go with it. Right? So Grant is going to talk about these different processes that people go through in their head, because Grant says if you're negotiating, if you're using a heart person's negotiation strategy with a head person, they're going to write you off. And so there's a lot to be said. This was a presentation that Grant did at one of our masterminds, and Richard would tell you it's excellent, and I think this was really, really worthy of something I wanted to share with the whole audience. So he'll be at NoteExpo and talk about that. It's very smart. Grant is buying houses on terms, and they are buying virtually all over the United States, and in 14 days they put 8 houses under contract. Right? Oh, so you really can do this in a big way, right? So that is another part of the process that I want to really introduce to you guys. So part of it has got to be, what are you saying to the customer that converts them? Why do they end up selling to you? What was the closing cycle? What was the process that says, man, I really want to do this? So this is a very big part of it. And then another thing that Seth will tell you, if you're going to convert customers and you're going to beat your competition, you got to be an animal at follow-up. Right, Seth? You got to be an animal. You got to be, and this is, so these are the things. We're going to ask you, are you committed to these things, and are you okay with these things? You know this is what it takes. Once you do that, I'm telling you right now, the God's honest truth is, truth be told, this is the most underserved market in the note business. You're asking me the #1 most underserved market in the note business? It's what I just described to you this morning. There is such a lack of talent. There's such a lack of skill set in this business. I couldn't be more excited to see some of you guys jump on this like a hound dog on a bone, because this is a big opportunity. You just gotta you got to commit to the journey. And so we're gonna do that. We're gonna take some special sessions with you guys. We're gonna help you do it. Kevin Moore and I have talked about this. We mutually agree that this is definitely something that people need to do. But we're gonna make sure that we're gonna sort of be SEAL Team 6. Okay? So not everybody's suited to go join SEAL Team 6, right? We want to make sure that we got the right troops, and we're going to take you inside, and if I get somebody that has the right DNA and right commitment, I'm going to say we virtually have a 100% chance of success. And that's exactly how we're going to look at it. So for the rest of you that aren't interested in this, let me say this. What I've just described to you is the characteristics that somebody needs to go bring you inventory. If going and hustling and finding the deal direct doesn't suit you, and it won't suit some of you in the room, it's perfectly okay. I just described to you the DNA, that the person that is going to go find the inventory for you, I'm just describing to you what they've got to be. So if we can go train up some SEAL Team 6 troops to go do this, the rest of you may benefit from it, right? Because now all of a sudden we'll be digging out inventory that's not been traded today. And we've talked about this for a time, and I really bantered this. I talked to my staff about it many times, and I just have a passion for seeing some guys really do this and do it well. And it's like, okay, we'll make a special commitment to do it. And so part of this survey that we're going to send you, it won't be just about this. But part of this survey we're going to send out is we're going to ask you to sort of raise your hand if this fits you. If you just click, no, that piece of the business doesn't sound like it's a fit for me, there certainly won't be any hard feelings. I totally get that. But I think what I've done today is sort of describe to you what a SEAL Team 6 team looks like. Right? To be a member of that team, this is the DNA I believe you got to have. And I really, truly believe that you can crush it out there because there's just not a bunch of people. That could be either chasing portfolios, or it could be chasing mom and pops, or it could be some combination of both of you. So this is fee income, right? It would be something where you can go buy deals. Bob has a killer deal that we used as a case study a lot, was a case study winner that you bought direct off of mail and paid 50 cents on the dollar, invested $11,500 and made $100,000 in less than 4 years, right, on a payoff. So but here's the thing. I want you to go industrialize this. I want you to really go do a business. I don't want you to pop a deal or two. I want you to really go do this. How many deals could somebody buy in a year? Any idea? 60 to 100. 60 to 100 deals with an average profit of probably $7,000 a deal. So this should have some significant economic benefit to you if you really go out there and decide to do it. And once again, what I want for you is to broker so many deals and buy one for yourself, and broker so many deals and then buy one for yourself. And you'll wake up and figure out just exactly how I started building my initial portfolio in the business, was doing exactly that model. So there's going to be some big opportunities with that. Structuring the deals right you can even do it where it takes almost none of your capital. So there's all kind of different lucrative ways that could work. And I'm gonna come at you this afternoon with a completely different strategy. It's a similar idea, but I'm going to do it it's going to be a different product in a different way. So I've tried to really look at the market and say, what are the most underserved things in the market, and how do we do that, and how do we pursue it? And I thought this would be a good way to start out the day. I hope this has been helpful to you, and I look forward to seeing some of you guys really pursue this. I think there's some big economic strategies for some of you guys that are kind of looking for a next thing. The NPL thing has got a little bit of the bloom off the vine, and what could I go do next, and what would that look like? So I think for some of you guys, this would really be an opportunity. Thank you.